Hello, I am Moodida, and welcome back to Satisfactory. Today I want to cover load balancing the dreaded 5-way split. Splitting things 4, 6, 8 ways is very straightforward and easily scalable to larger numbers. The 5-way can be a little tricky, but extremely useful. As we can see some real basic examples right here. This is a 4-way split, so you have your initial amount plug into right here. And then that gets split in half, and then each of those gets split in half. That way you'll have 4 equal parts. Similarly, you've got a 6-way split, but instead of splitting the second ones 2 ways, you split it 3 ways, and now you have 6 equal parts. The 8-way split is essentially just 2 of these joined up with 1 more splitter in the middle. So if it's in multiples of 2s and 3s, the load balancing is pretty straightforward. When we start dealing with the prime numbers, things get a little bit tricky. Alright, so how to split something evenly with an odd number like 5. So we need at a minimum 2 splitters here for the final bit, right? Since they only have 3 each. But if I have it set up like this, where the initial amount is coming into this splitter, that gets split in half, this won't end up being equal. Because the way this is breaking it down right now is the initial amount comes in, we've got 1/2. We split that half into thirds. So now we have 1/6, 1/6, 1/6. And over here we have 1/2. And then we split that in half. And so we've got 1/4, 1/4. So this wouldn't be 5 equal amounts. The easiest way to do that is to throw a merger down before the very initial splitter. And then we're going to use all 3 outputs of this one. And we're going to loop it back into the merger. And then this goes into here. And so now we have our initial amount plug into the merger. And let me walk you through the math of why this works. So let's go ahead and use a nice even round 100. So we have our initial amount plugging in at 100. Going into the merger, that means this line is still 100. We go into this first splitter, split that in half. Here's 50, here's 50. We're splitting that 50 all 3 ways, so it's 16 2/3 across all of these 6 belts. That 16 2/3 loops back into here, and now we have our second loop. Alright, so round 2, we still have 100 plugging in, that doesn't change. Now we have 116 because we had 16 2/3, so now this belt needs to be able to hold 116 2/3, so I guess really these should have been marked 2 from the beginning. Let's just do that now. Pretend that was there in the first place. So now our 116 2/3 gets split in half. So now we have 58 1/3 on both sides. And then both of those are getting split into thirds. And so we've got 19 4/9 across all 6 of these belts. And so now it's increased to 19.44 on this belt. And so now we go into round 3. We've still got our initial 100 plugging in, but now we have that 19.44. So in total, we're at 19.44 on this belt. That gets split in half. Now we're up to 59.722 on both of these sides. Those get split equally 3 ways, and we're up to 19.907. And I think you can see a pattern here. After a couple more cycles, this is what it ends up being. We've got 100, and this is going to cap out at 120, and I'll show you. So if we've got 120 into here, that gets split in half. We've got 60 and 60. That gets split 3 ways. We've got 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, and that loops back with our initial 100. We're back to 120. So it won't continuously increase, and this belt will cap out at essentially 120% of what you're plugging in if it's a 5-way split. You can use this exact same method to do any of the prime splits. So if you needed to split something 7 ways, you split it 8 ways, loop back the last one into a merger, and then make sure that this belt can hold the initial amount plus the 1/7. And then you could do this for 11 or any of the prime numbers. This will work. Now that we've covered the math of why this works, let me show you how you get around this limitation. Because what if you only have Mark II belts I can plug in 100, but what if I want to plug in 120 and do a 5-way split? I would need that belt to be able to hold 144. So let me show you how you can get around it. We're going to start with a splitter, and then we're going to do 2 more splitters. But instead of connecting these directly, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to place a merger in between. So now my initial amount is going to connect to a splitter instead of a merger. We're going to go into 2 mergers. Those mergers are each going to go into a splitter. And then we're going to do something very similar where we've got 3 out of one of them. And then for the other splitter, this right here, which would normally go back to a merger, is now going to go into another splitter. So this goes into a splitter. Good old straight mode does not like 180s. And then this one will get split here. And the other half will come to the other side. All right, so let's run through this real quickly. We've got the initial 120. That gets split in half, so we've got 60 and 60. But on this very first run, we don't have anything coming in yet, so we've still got 60. That splits 3 ways. Here's 20, which also means these are all 20. So we've got 20 looping back into here, which then gets split in half. And then we start the second loop. All right, round 2. 120 plugging in. We still have 60 right after this first splitter, but now we have that 20 that got split. So here's 10. So now we're up to 70 on this section and this section. That gets split into thirds, 23.3 across all 6 of these belts. And so now that amount comes into the splitter. And we go through round 3. We've got our initial 120, goes into the splitter. This doesn't change. So we've got 60 and 60. But now we have that new 23.33 amount. That gets split into half. Joins up with our 60. And now we're up to 71 and 2/3. That gets split into thirds. 23, I think that's 8/9. So I won't keep going through this, but as you can see, 120 divided by 5 is 24, and we're just going to keep getting closer and closer, and after 1 or 2 more cycles, we'll basically be at that number right there. And so with this one, you do need a Mark II belt here and here, and those would be the only ones. And this is the second method that I use when I need to get around the limitation of that one. It does require an extra merger and splitter, but it works just as fantastic. All right, well, proof is in the pudding. So I set this up real quick so we can test it out. This is just some simple load balancing to get us to 100. So 120 goes into here. We split that in half, 60 and 60. That 60 gets split into thirds. So that would be 20, 20, and 20. So I'm looping back 20 out of the initial 120, and we're left with 100 that'll end up on this line. Let's throw a stack of concrete in here and see how it ends up. Let's check our containers and see how well we did. 100. 100. Ooh, looking good. Ah, you love to see it. I was a little nervous. I thought maybe we'd be off by like 1 or 2 at most. Some would be at 99, some would be at 101, but it's nice when it's just spot on. I've got really high confidence, but let's go ahead and test out this second one as well. All right, well, let's go ahead and check our work. 100, 100, looking good so far. Ah, well, it works like a charm. I have successfully used both of these methods in multiple playthroughs to both load balance 5 machines at a time, and I've also used this to split off certain amounts from belts. And that's what I want to cover next. I'm going to start a new playlist on the channel, and I'm going to go through some of the common splits that I've ran into. So something like splitting off 1/5 or 1/10 or 1/15, and turning it into a compact blueprint. And I'll give examples of where I've ran into that in my world. So look forward to that, and thanks for watching.